One. Welcome to ZBook Successful Authors Podcast. And tonight I have with me #1 best-selling author of Death in Paris. It's the Màiri Maguire Cozy Mystery Murder Book 1. And Kate Darroch is a lifelong fan of Cozy Sleuths, like a Sherlock, Holmes, and Father Brown, who is melding her love of cozies with many years of writing experience and living in foreign climes to create Travel Cozies. So, hi, Kate. How you doing?
Hello there. I'm doing just great, Eric, and thank you so much for having me on the show.
Yeah, you're in the UK right now. You're not far from me, are you? You're on the southern coast?
Yes, indeed. I live in beautiful coastal Devon, and I am so lucky because I have an uninterrupted view from my living room window straight across the Bristol Channel to Wales.
Wow. Any warships out there, submarines or anything? I mean, you wouldn't see a submarine if it was out there, would you?
Well, you see, the water is not deep enough, so we're quite safe.
Okay.
And we've got a lovely inland harbour as well, so it's a fishing area. We do a lot of fishing.
Yeah. You know, your book did rather well. Amazon #1 bestseller in 5 categories, 3 continents, maybe more, with over 8,000 downloads in the first 4 days and over 100 4- and 5-star reviews. How did you launch your book like that?
Well, it was absolutely fantastic. We were tremendously lucky. First of all, Publishers Weekly, which is the premier book trade publication, picked us up for their slot Indie Roundup. And we got the fiction spotlight, which only 10 books a year got. So that got a lot of attention.
Nice.
I was listed on NetGalley, which is where all the booksellers and librarians go to check sample books. So because we were in that particular publication, they all went and saw my book, and a lot of them said very nice things about it, and I got recommended for 2 library lists, which was fantastic. Then I have 4,000 people now on my subscriber list for my newsletter that I send out every week. So I told all of them I was launching, and a lot of them got the book. And then I had a lot of support. 13 authors all endorsed the product and recommended the series to their readerships, and they all have much larger readerships than I do, including Amy Van Sant, who has a readership of 150,000 people. She's very, very popular, and she came out and endorsed me also. And then I had some help from a friend of yours also, a gentleman whom we both know, Paul Brody. And so with all of these different facets of people rooting for me, I was very, very lucky, and we shot straight to #1 within an hour of launch and stayed there for the entire launch period of 4 days in international crime and mystery, in women sleuths, in amateur sleuths, and in cozies. We had the top #1 slot in the main cozy category for 4 days.
Nice, nice. And how did you build up your email list?
Well, again, I was very, very lucky. I happen to know Nick Stevenson. You may be familiar with him, a very famous thriller writer. And he loves to help other young authors. Not that I'm young chronologically, but I'm young because this is my first book. And Nick was very kind and helpful, and he gave me some tips, and he introduced me to some people. And as a result of that, before I actually launched, I knew over 100 people on Facebook to whom I'd been introduced directly or indirectly by Nick. They all introduced me to their readerships. We gave everybody a taster of the book so that they knew what it was about. And we cut off at a very exciting point where there has been depredations to the heroine's best friend. So we had a huge waiting audience that wanted to know what happened next. Very, very lucky.
That's awesome. That is a great example of networking, huh?
Oh, it was brilliant. It was pure networking. I didn't know a soul. I'm a first-time author. I didn't know a soul. I had zero readership in fiction. Yes, in the business world, I have a readership, but it's completely separate.
Yeah.
And it was purely because I knew a few people, and those few people introduced me to other people. It was 100% networking.
Excellent. And was that primarily through Facebook groups or just your network?
It was primarily through Facebook groups. I'm a member of more than 50 Facebook groups on purely cozy subjects, and it's a very, very friendly community.
Nice.
Cozy authors are very nice people. They love to help other cozy authors, and you don't even have to ask. They send you a message saying, hey, you went out on my newsletter this week. I hope it helps you. And things like that. They really are so nice. And one lady, Jerry Cashel, hosted a lunch party for me. I've never met her. We had an online lunch party just because I'm a new cozy author.
That's cool. Online lunch party, how does that work?
Well, basically what happens is she has a group, which is a review group, and you take over the group. It's called an author takeover or a lunch party. You post whatever you like in that group for the duration of your lunch party, and all your friends can interact with you, and then you have a countdown for them to go and buy the book, and then they go and buy the book and come back and tell you they've bought the book.
Yeah, that's cool.
And then they all wait out and do reviews for you. So
I feel like
at my lunch party, I get 20 reviews.
Yeah, I feel like I've been on vacation too long. Like I came back and the whole world is, you're rocking it. That's cool. Yeah, because I was going to ask you next. I mean, it kind of answered it already. I mean, when you got 4,000 people on your subscribers list and you're so active in these groups, then the reviews were pretty simple, huh?
Oh, yeah. A lot of hard work because you have to make people aware of the book. Any launch is a lot of hard work.
Yeah.
But you should have everything lined up before you begin. And if you have everything lined up before you begin, then you will be successful.
Right. So how did you incentivize them to review the book?
I did not incentivize them. You're not allowed to do so on Amazon.
Yeah.
What I did was I sent out an email in my newsletter. And I said, guys, I am not allowed to incentivize you. You know that. And I don't need to incentivize you because I'm looking online today and I see 43 reviews. I said, what I want you to do is I want you all to go out that have not already reviewed and review me. And I said, I cannot obviously incentivize you in any way for the review itself. But if you get the word out there, if you post on Facebook and on Twitter and a variety of other places that they can both post, if you tell your friends in Goodreads and in Facebook that you're reading the book, that should be sufficient to generate some organic reviews. And in fact, it did generate organic reviews because we now have well over 150 reviews all over the net. And also the promised reward for getting the word out, not for reviewing, was that they would be entered in a prize draw for a signed paperback, an audiobook, and a box set of the entire series e-signed.
That's not bad, huh? You incentivized to share, huh?
Incentivized to share. And people
you should be a marketer, you know, you're a first-time book author, but you sound like a really savvy expert author here. I mean, a marketer here.
Oh, it's so kind of you to say so. I'm not a marketer per se, but I have been in business. And if you're in business of any kind, you have to figure out what your customers like. And it's no different with readers. Your readers are your customers. You have to give them a book that they are going to enjoy, but you also have to give them little extras. For example, I had a beautiful bookmark made, and I promised everyone that downloaded in Launch Week, they didn't have to do anything else other than download in Launch Week, when the product was free for the first 4 days. And then after that, they could get like a bonus, buy book one for 99 cents. It's on 99 cents at the moment because we're still on the incentivized price. Buy book one for 99 cents, and I will give you a voucher to buy book two. because you're not allowed to give away a book that's on Amazon. The only way that you can give it away is to give people a voucher, and then they go and buy it on Amazon with the voucher. That's allowed.
That sounds like a lot of headaches. How did you get them the voucher?
Oh, it was very easy. I just said to Amazon, I would like to have 200 vouchers, please.
Mm-hmm.
And they said, no problem, and gave me 200 vouchers.
Would that work for print books too?
It would work for any kind of Amazon product. You just get the voucher associated with whatever it is that you are marketing on Amazon. It can be a print book, it can be an audio book, it can be an ebook. For example, I know 4 cozy authors who are incentivizing their audiobook. And how they do that is they have an arrangement with Amazon whereby people do not have to join Audible and use up one of their slots, because they only get 2 slots a month. When they purchase the ebook, they automatically get the audio.
Very interesting. I'm thinking about doing something that for my print books, and so you're giving me great ideas. So
I'm glad you enjoy. And one thing that people really like for a print book, and that's why I did it, they like author signed and they like a bookmark. So I combined the two. I've got a signed bookmark.
So they're not PDFs. You send them the physical bookmark.
I send them a physical bookmark that has been signed.
Oh, then you get their real address and you can do some direct marketing.
I do. But basically, I've got to say that the people who ask for the bookmark are already fans.
Yeah.
Like I send out my email that contains my newsletter on a Sunday, and within an hour of it going out, 40 or 50 people are in my inbox, and they're saying, we did this, we did that, we love the book. Can we please be entered in the prize draw? Or when I offered, which I did this Sunday, the bookmark, I had 75 emails within 15 minutes of it going out.
Yeah, cool. And how did Goodreads work for you?
Well, very, very well. What happened with Goodreads, I didn't know a soul because I was a brand new author and I didn't know what to do in Goodreads. I didn't know anything about anything. So what I did was I went on Goodreads and I imported into Goodreads every book that I had read in the last 18 months and reviewed those books. And other people who liked those books could see that I was reviewing them. So they came along to my site and they started to talk with me. We got a dialogue going. Within 3 months, I had about 50 followers. And today I have nearly 200 followers on Goodreads.
And how did you tie that in with your book launch?
Basically, we didn't do an awful lot with Goodreads directly, because all we did was we said to everybody we're having a book launch, and then people had already reviewed it. They had received advanced review copies, because you have to have some people who've seen it. Most of my followers on Goodreads had actually come from NetGalley. So they're mainly booksellers and librarians, but there are some, people who are just straightforward readers. And what would happen would be that, like, once I had 50 people reading and reviewing the book, who were all kind of small influencers because they were librarians and booksellers, then I began to get members of the public coming along to read the book. And so then once they already had a review on Goodreads, how I worked with that was I get in touch with them, which you can easily do on Goodreads. You've got the capacity to make a comment on their review that they give you. And I thanked them all very much for my review. And I asked them, did they want to be entered in the prize draw, which some of them did and some of them didn't. And I asked them if they would be very, very kind and also review me on Amazon. And about 1/3 of my Goodreads following reviewed me on Amazon, and about 2/3 of them became newsletter subscribers.
Excellent. Wow. Yeah. Yeah. I've heard a lot about Goodreads. I like Goodreads too, but I never knew how to use it as for a launch. They had advertising for a while. I don't know what happened to that, But anyways, I'm getting ahead of myself, geeking out on the marketing. Let's
Please
go back a little bit.
giveaways.
Let's move back a little bit and just what got you into writing in the first place?
Well, I've done a lot of business writing, and now I'm retired and I can do what I want. And I decided it was really fun to write a crime book, a caper of some kind. And I've got a book that I'm halfway through. It's called Found Money. And it's about a girl who inadvertently, she doesn't know she's doing it, steals the proceeds of a bank robbery. And the criminals who've robbed the bank follow her all around the world trying to get the money back. So I'm halfway through writing that. But then when I was halfway through writing that, on the 19th of December last year, the idea for Màiri suddenly struck me. And I just fell in love with Màiri, and I really, really wanted to write all about her adventures. And I've been writing nothing else ever since.
Yeah, that's interesting. That's your first book, but you have already 2 in the series, right?
That's right. I have 2 up on Amazon at the moment, and I have a 3rd one coming out at the end of May.
How long does it take you to write a book?
Well, generally speaking, a lot longer than it takes me to write Màiri. You see, I'm just in love with Màiri. I think she's so fantastic, and I just love her, and I love everything about her, and her adventures are such fun. And this is what my readers tend to say. They say, you must have had so much fun writing this because it's such a fun novel. And I just have so much fun doing it. And what I find is I write for 2 hours every day, and I write on paper. A lot of authors, they type. I don't, or they, maybe speak to a voice machine or something. I don't do that. I write on paper. I get paper and I get pencil, and I just write for 2 hours. And then once I've done that, I put that aside, and I come back to it later in the day and type it into the computer. And then I edit the next day, and then put it aside, whatever I've written for a little bit, continue writing, come back to it afterwards. And the first book in the Màiri series took me 7 weeks to write. And everybody says, wow, how did you manage to write a whole novel in 7 weeks? Well, to me, it was a lifetime because I was dying for Màiri to win.
Yeah. How many words is it?
It is just over 55,000 words.
So you wrote those on paper by hand first?
By hand, yeah.
Probably more than that, actually, huh?
Yeah, I wrote about 75,000 words on paper.
My God, that sounds like torture to me.
No, I love doing it. It was wonderful. And then I put all of that into the computer, and then I sent it for editing, and my editor took out all my adjectives and, took out all my adverbs. And
yeah.
You don't need this scene and you don't need that scene. And it wound up at 55,000 words.
Yeah, that's one process there. I would never think of writing them by hand. But again, if you do, maybe you make less mistakes by writing it by hand, huh?
I don't think it really makes an awful lot of difference, because what I do find is that when you write by hand, you write faster.
Really?
Yes. I can get as much information down on paper, writing by hand, in 2 hours as I could get if I were sitting at the computer in about 4 hours.
Wow.
Now, I still need to get that information from the paper into the computer. So I'm not really saving any time in terms of production of the book. I am saving a lot of time in terms of creation of the book. And most writers will tell you that where they get held up with a book is they come to a plot point and they don't know what to say about that plot point. Well, I never have that problem because I'm putting it all down on paper.
Interesting. Yeah, well, that I don't need to ask you what you do about writer's block now, do I?
Well, I'm very, very lucky because I've spent so much time in the business world writing reports and writing all kinds of boring stuff that you have to do when you're in business. And in consequence, I'm very disciplined about sitting down and writing, because when you're in business, nobody's interested. Are you feeling creative that morning? If they want a 300-page report by the end of the day, they want a 300-page report by the end of the day, and you've got to produce it. So maybe it's not your best work because you've done it really fast, but you've still got to produce. You don't have any time to think about it. And I think that what causes block most is people overthinking things. They sit at the keyboard and they say, oh, what shall I do now? Whereas if they were writing on paper a rough draft and then they type it up and then afterwards they edit, that really removes block. There's a wonderful woman called Dorothea Brand, and she wrote a book called On Writing, and she gives priceless advice. And that priceless advice is, do not ever use the word block. Sit down at your desk at a specific time and write a specific number of words. And if the specific words you're writing are, the cat sat on the mat sat a cat, it doesn't make any difference. Just write. And when you've written enough words, a story will emerge.
Interesting. Yeah. What was her name?
Dorothea Brand. She wrote a book called On Writing, and she wrote it many years ago. We're going back 40, maybe as much as 50 years. She wrote this book on writing, and she was basically talking to people who are not natural writers. They were not people like myself for whom it's a joy to put words on paper and who want to tell stories. They were people who had to write for various things connected with their employment and who had a freeze, this block. They couldn't sit down at a typewriter and do what they needed to do. And this was how she taught them to write.
Yeah, cool. I'm going to check that out. And you also have another one here, your friend Lynn Morrison. What did she say about that?
Oh, yeah, she's so funny, Lynn. She does a wonderful series called Oxford Key, which is about the colleges in Oxford, which is very beloved to me, Oxford, and it was lovely to revisit the colleges. And she lives there in Oxford and writes about the Oxford Key series. And she said that when she began writing, she was in employment, and she thought how wonderful it would be when she ceased to be in employment, she would just sit and write. And now every morning she gets up and she sits at her desk and she says, shall I procrastinate my writing by doing some book publicity? Or shall I procrastinate my book promotion by doing some writing?
I like that.
It's very good because, you know, as an indie author, this is your big problem. This is the challenge of being an indie author. How do you get people to recognize the fact that your book even exists?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Create and promote. And most people concentrate on the creation side, you know, but we have to do both. That's why I have this big poster here printed out right in front of me. It says, we are kept from our goals, not by obstacles, but by a clear path to a lesser goal, right?
So true.
Yeah,
so
and
true.
so when we got the big book in front of us, well, it's easier to promote today, isn't it? You know, or is it easier to make a Facebook ad or whatever, you know? Yeah, no, you should be writing, you know?
But I think you have to do both. I think it's not a lot of use writing dozens of wonderful books that nobody knows exists. But I think that you don't have to spend your life promoting. I began on Facebook with an hour a day because I was creating networking connections. Nowadays, I only spend about 15 minutes a day on Facebook, and that's sufficient because all I do is I go in, I look at my notifications, and I respond to people who are communicating with me. And that is just fantastic because we've built up that situation. And then I spend another 15 minutes on Twitter creating some tweets. And then I make review graphics. When people have done a particularly nice review, I make a review graphic. And then I say to all my fans that have kindly joined my newsletter and are being incentivized to get paperbacks, I say to them, well, you know, you're sharing anyway. Here are some great reviews for you to share.
Yeah,
and that's what they share. And and after a while, I haven't asked them to do any review, but what usually happens is they see all these other reviews and they go and write a review themselves.
Yeah. Well, we've geeked out about the marketing for long enough. How about telling us about your book now?
Oh, well, this is a really, really, it's a romp.
Yeah.
It's a really, really funny book. The heroine is a school teacher in Glasgow in 1970. And the 1970s, particularly in Glasgow, was a very prim and proper period. And people are people. There were romances going on, but they weren't out in the open. And then flower power hit Glasgow. Now, it had hit the rest of the world about 5 or 6 years earlier, but it hit Glasgow, and it was a revolution because suddenly everything was different and people were called by their first names for the first time, and all kinds of things were happening that had never happened before. And it was also a political scene that was totally amazing because for the first time ever, and sadly it's no longer the case, but for the first time ever, you could get a government grant. The government paid you to go to university.
Oh.
So you could go and they would pay your fees, they would pay your lunches, they would pay your travel expenses, and they would pay, if you were living away from home, they would pay for your digs. And if you were living at home, they gave your mother a little something to cover the cost of your board.
Nice.
And this meant that anybody who had brains to get into university didn't have to worry about how were they going to pay for it.
Yeah.
And so there's a lot at the beginning of the book where Mary's talking about it's as easy for a working class girl, for a coal miner's daughter to get her degree as a debutante. It's as easy for her to get her degree as any man. And there's a lot of that because it was an era of profound education of revolution. So there she is. She's living her life. She's very happy. She's got this boyfriend, and she's had since her university days. She's 32 now. So they've been together 12 years. And he is abroad most of the time because he's a geologist and works for Geophysical Services International. So most of the time he's at sea. But she's confident that one day they'll get married and they'll have kids and so on. Well, he comes back from one of his trips and he tells her, I'm marrying somebody else. So she's devastated. And then her friend Liana, who had the same devastation 6 months earlier when she discovered that her husband was cheating on her, she gets hit with a false tax bill, not a real tax bill. She is being hit with this false tax bill because the inspector wants to seduce her. So it's a situation where they both feel that what they need to do is get out of Glasgow. And they leave Glasgow and travel to Paris. And the idea is that they're going to have a lot of fun in Paris, a few days holiday, cheer themselves up. And then they're going to travel to Istanbul. And in Istanbul, they are both going to work in the Nautical High School, which is a very prestigious boys' school. And they will really enjoy their new life. That's their idea. Well, what happens is they arrive in Paris, and no sooner have they arrived in Paris than Liana gets arrested for murder. So the rest of the book is about Mary finding out how the murder took place, who the real murderer is, and fleeing her friend. And she does this in a very unusual way. She has a little notebook, and she records everything in her notebook, and she has a little timetable. And she looks at the timetable and figures out who was where, when, and what this means in terms of who could have committed the murder. But mainly, she's not exactly psychic, not overtly, but she's very, very intuitive. So she picks things up out of the air that other people don't pick up, but then she finds a logical reason why she's had that intuition. But really, it's an intuition. Anyway, she is greatly assisted in her attempts to free her friend by a mysterious military man, Major Peveril. And Major Peveril behaves beautifully to her. He's very kind to her. He's very gentle and generous. He's always giving her lovely meals and cheering her up and helping her to investigate. And you're sort of sitting there saying, does he like her? Or is he just doing this because it's his job? Because you discover, she doesn't know, but you, the reader, discover that this guy is actually, a military spy from about 30 years ago, and he's now in charge of a gigantic anti-terrorist operation, and he's using her as his conduit to weapon smugglers. So that is, that's as much as I'm going to tell you about the story. If you want to find out what happens.
Exactly. No, you don't have to give it away. No spoilers here. I've got it in front of me, by the way, and I'm looking at this whole timetable. It's interesting. It's really cool, actually. And
Thank you.
yeah. So if anybody's listening out there, go get a copy, because it's a really cool, cozy mystery, and it's not my genre. So when I say that, I mean it. Yeah.
A lot of people who are not cozy readers like this particular one because it's got a lot of unusual elements. It's got the spies, it's got the terrorists, it's got, all the usual cozy elements which revolve around food and family and the heroine's emotions. It's got all of that.
Yeah.
But also it's got a Sherlock Holmes type puzzle. You've got to figure out who the murderer is.
Yeah, I'm looking at that right now. But okay, back to the questions. Did you do you use Amazon ads?
I do. I find that there's a chap called Robert Ryan, and he wrote a book called Author Unleashed, which basically explains to the baby author like myself what you have got to do in order to market your book successfully. Now, he is not talking about practical aspects like going on Goodreads. He is talking about writing a really good description for your book. That is what Author Unleashed is about, teaches you how to write a good description for your book. And then he's written 4 books in the series, one of which is Amazon Ads Unleashed. And in Amazon Ads Unleashed, he teaches you how to do your Amazon ads properly. And what he's saying, it's very sensible. Anybody who reads it immediately understands that this is what they need to do. You find out who the authors are who have readers who would enjoy your book. And then once you have discovered authors whose readers like the same kind of book that you're writing, then you get sponsored advertisements on those authors' pages so that their readers will see your book. Now, nobody minds this because in the cozy world, the cozy marketplace, the readers are constantly looking for a new cozy because they want to read more cozies than are available to them. Each cozy marketplace is what you might call a splinter market because each readership enjoys a different kind of cozy. So although there are a lot of cozy authors out there, there are not sufficient cozy authors to meet the particular tastes of any one of the splinter audiences. So all the splinter audiences are going out looking for new cozy writers. And when an author whom they like says to them, hey, you should go read this new cozy, there's a riot for them to go and get the new cozy.
Interesting. That's great. That sounds like an underserved market. That sounds really good.
Well, it's actually a very difficult market to rank in because it's got an unusually large number of authors. It is basically what happened is, and this is something that very, very rarely happens, there's a classification system that is used by all booksellers, and including Amazon. There is no one in the whole book marketing world who does not use this classification system. It's based on the book Zisbin. And the classification system, until 2 months ago, if you wrote cozy, you had to go into the classification system. Mystery general was classification number 1, and detective fiction was classification number 2. 2 months ago, they created a new classification, cozy general. And there are 3 subcategories of cozy general. It's absolutely unheard of. They make a new classification once in a blue moon. This time, they not only made a new classification, they immediately did 4 subcategories for it. Wow. So it shows you that this is a gigantic readership, but it also shows you that this readership has very different tastes. You can't just say, I want to buy a cozy. Do you want to buy a cozy that features animals? Do you want to buy a cozy that features magic? Do you want to buy a cozy that features food? Do you want to buy a cozy that features travel? Do you want to buy a cozy that features some kind of esoteric profession? Like, for example, you're a chiropractor. There's loads and loads and loads. I mean, I think there's something like about 500 or 600 splinter cozy marketplaces. and you have to find your particular audience. Now, as long
Wow,
as
that's a
you find
lot of splinters, huh?
a lot of splinters, and as long as you find your particular audience, you're laughing because they're going to buy your books forever. They can't get enough of what they want. But
You
you
did
have
some good market research there. You see, this is, yeah, in German we say Prachtexemplar. You did, because that's what do you call it? The alpha and omega, know your niche, or do you say niche?
I say niche, but niche is
Okay.
fine. Everyone else says niche.
There's riches and niches,
Yeah, exactly.
Well, my French colleagues say niche, so I'm constantly fighting. But anyways, you did the alpha and omega is, first of all, placement, right? Where you're going to put the book.
Absolutely.
And you did that very well. And that's interesting that they made it a new category for Cozy finally. Is that the BISAC categories?
That's the BISAC categories, yes. And until very, very recently, we're talking 2 months ago, from the inception of books, there had been these two categories of mystery general and detective fiction, because of course you can also have detection that's non-fiction. And that was all. If your book had anything to do with detectives or fiction, it didn't matter what kind of a book it was, including any of the 500 different varieties of cozy, it went into one of those two categories. And then BISAC recognized the fact that the cozy marketplace was so huge that it had to have a separate classification of its own.
Yeah. And trying to get a bureaucracy like that to move is probably impossible, but it happened, huh? Crazy.
Huge readership. I mean, people were reading cozies as cozies and designating them as cozies for a good 12 years before BISAC moved.
Yeah. Well, that's good. Yeah, and it sounds like you nailed the niche, so great.
Oh, well, it's very kind of you to say so. It's early days. I'm still searching for my particular audience, but I've been very lucky. I've got a tiny fragment of that audience.
Well, let me tell you, most people take years before they build up an audience of 4,000 email subscribers, and that's so you're doing something right there between the Facebook and the other things. So most people 5 years or more to get 4,000 readers on their subscriber list. So
they should buy Nick Stevenson's course. I happen to know Nick because he lives relatively near me, but he also does a course, and this course is called Your First 10,000 Readers. So I don't think of 4,000 as a big number, because the number I'm shooting for as a starting point is my first 10,000 readers, because that's what Nick calls his course. And he has over 1 million readers. He may have as many as 4 million, but he certainly has well over 1 million. And he says he has this course. Anyone can go and buy this course, and it teaches you how to grow your email list.
Yeah, it's funny you say that, because Nick Stevenson is my favorite. He's the first one when 2014, 2015, when I was starting and stuff. His book Reader Magnets was the first one I found, and that kick-started my reader list too. And so say hi to him for me. That would be great.
I certainly will. And his policy hasn't changed. It's still Reader Magnets. I have a reader magnet available. It's called Dicing with Death. And I'm creating a second reader magnet. It's called Màiri Meets Khrushchev. And Màiri Meets Khrushchev is a prequel. She goes to New York to the International, Assembly in New York, in United Nations. And at United Nations, where she's taking her schoolgirls to understand about the Concord of Nations, it happens to be the day when Khrushchev goes ballistic and hits all the newspapers. It's about her relationship with Khrushchev, which is very funny. Very funny.
Interesting. So are you doing, go ahead.
It happens St. Patrick's Day.
And are you doing the permanently free model, or?
Oh, yes, it's free. Yes, Màiri Meets Khrushchev is free. It's what's called a prequel, because it happens 10 years before the main action. And Dicing with Death is also free. And it's what we call a taster, which means, you read it and you can be satisfied with that if you want to. But most people are not satisfied. Most people go on to buy a book.
Yeah, perfect. Great. Yeah. Interesting. Yeah. I even made a course. One of my first online courses I made was how to do reader magnets. And yeah, my 7-day challenge. But back to you. So are you ready for the blitz round?
Okay, what's the blitz round?
Yeah, just more questions.
Okay. Fire away.
No. Okay. Who is your favorite author?
G.K. Chesterton. I love the Father Brown stories, but I also love The Man Who Was Thursday, and I love all satiric works like the 31st of June. And I think G.K. Chesterton is just a masterly writer, no matter what he's writing. But Father Brown was my first love amongst Cozy Sleuths.
Before I forget, who was that author who wrote Amazon Ads Unleashed? You just talked
Robert Ryan, Ryan.
Oh.
His books are very cheap. They're only about $5 each.
Okay.
And there are only 4 of them. And if you buy those 4 books at $5 each and read them carefully, in my opinion, what do I know? I'm a beginner. But in my opinion, you know as much as you need to know to begin marketing. And obviously, once you've begun, you'll find your own pathway.
Yeah, excellent. I'm going to look that up. So what about, okay, next question. What is your favorite book?
Oh, there are too many. I can't choose. The world's full of wonderful books and so many different genres that I love. I mean, I love Jane Austen. Everybody loves Jane Austen. But basically, if we're looking at mystery, then my favorites are Father Brown, of course. The Blue Cross is my favorite book that features Father Brown. I love Sherlock Holmes. I love all the Ellery Queen mysteries. I've never come across an Ellery Queen mystery I didn't enjoy. They specialize in locked room mysteries, and my second book is a locked room mystery. It's an unusual locked room mystery. It's got a different solution from any other locked room mystery that I ever heard of.
A locked what?
A locked room is a particular kind of mystery. Okay. In this particular kind of mystery, you know who's done the crime or you don't know who's done the crime. It doesn't matter, because the puzzle is how was the crime done. The dead body turns up inside a locked room. And if it happens to be snowing or something, there's no footsteps in the snow. There's some reason why nobody could have got into this room, and that's where the dead body is. And he's locked into it, and that's why they call it a locked room mystery. Now, in my case, it's a locked train compartment mystery.
Okay.
Because the dead body turns up in the train. And how did it get there? That's the mystery. And I have a solution that is, shall we say, unusual.
What is it?
I'm telling you the solution. Certainly not.
Oh, yeah, of course.
That's Death on the Orient Express. Which is my second book, Death on the Istanbul Express. My inspiration for it, of course, was Death on the Orient Express. But as you know, in Death on the Orient Express, there's these 12 people there, and every one of them had a hand in the mystery in one way or another. But in my story, which is Death on the Istanbul Express, there is only one suspect, and we know who he is. The question is, how did he do it?
Interesting, indeed.
So I like locked room mysteries. And lastly, I love the Isaac Asimov's Black Widower mysteries. Because everybody's sitting around a dinner table and they're all just talking. And by just talking, they solve a crime.
And that's Asimov. I thought he was science fiction.
Yes, indeed. The man was a polyglot. He wrote 20 different genres, including 12 different fact genres. He was a university professor, and he wrote all kinds of scientific books in scientific spheres, but he also wrote political, he also wrote economic. He wrote a dozen different kinds of science fiction, and he had 2 different detective series within his science fiction. One was the Black Widowers, where they all sit around the dinner table and solve a crime. And the other was Wendell Earth. Now, Wendell Earth is an agoraphobic. He won't leave his home. and all the crimes take place on other planets. He's there on Earth and he won't leave Earth. And all the crimes take place on other planets, and it's about how he solves the crime at a distance of millions of miles, literally.
Interesting indeed. Yeah, Asimov was what he wrote over like 500 books or something. So,
oh, an amazing number. And he edited as well. He edited collections of stories by other authors. He was just amazing.
Yeah, yeah. Well, he was amazing, that's for sure. But he basically 24 hours a day writing, huh?
No, he wrote incredibly fast. He says that most of his short stories, and his short stories aren't that short, you know, most people would call them novella length. And he says most of them he wrote in a single day.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, I like that guy. I'm going to check out the Black Widower mysteries now. I didn't even know he wrote mysteries.
No, they're very good. But I like Wendell Earth as well, because Wendell Earth just sits there and thinks the way Mycroft Holmes just sat there and thought.
Yeah. Okay, next one. What's your number one productivity hack?
Well, I think I'm going to borrow a hack from television, from live television. Live television show producers have a saying, done is better than perfect. And what they mean is you can't have empty airspace. If you're going out with a live program, you've got to put something on the air. And so done is better than perfect is my motto that I live by, because let's face it, we live in an electronic world and electronic equipment constantly glitches. So there is always something going wrong. And if you allowed yourself to get bogged down in all the things that are going wrong and obsess about all the things that you're not doing, you'd never get anything done. So my pathway is have a plan. Always, always plan. If you fail to plan, you're planning to fail. So basically, have your plan, stick to your plan as much as you possibly can, and when the gremlins appear, as they will, do what you can to fix whatever's gone wrong, but do not let that distract you to moving on to the next phase of your plan. And I have sometimes started work at 5 a.m. and worked straight through to 2 a.m. because I was not going to abandon my next phase of my plan in spite of all the things that were going wrong.
That's a hardcore work ethic.
You just got to do it.
Yeah.
But there've been other days when, believe me, I've done nothing.
Yeah.
But you've got to, whatever your plan is. If I'm doing nothing, it's on a day that I've planned to take off. If I've got a day when I plan to do something, I make sure that something gets done. And if I've got to be up till 2 a.m. to get it done, it gets done.
Yeah. Okay. Then what's the one thing you would do differently if you had to do it all over again?
I'll tell you what I would do. I would start applying to publishing houses, because in the old days it was publishing houses. There weren't any indie authors. And I would write fiction and submit it to publishers, because I never did that. I had 100 fiction stories that I wrote and I never submitted to anyone. I just wrote them and my friends and I enjoyed them, and that was that. And if I had to do it over, I would turn to fiction writing an awful lot earlier than I did. I'm retired now. I retired early from business because I was reasonably successful and luckily had a few shillings in the bank and was able to retire early. And I'm thoroughly enjoying my retirement. I'm busier than I ever was when I was in business, but I'm doing what I love, which is writing fiction. Yeah,
well, that brings up the next question. So what's on the horizon for you?
Well, I've already released book 2, Death on the Istanbul Express. The next book, Death in Rome, is coming out in the summer. And then after Death in Rome, there's Death in Istanbul. She eventually gets to the school. Death in Istanbul is the next story, which comes out in September. And then what happens in Death in Rome, in Death in Paris, which is the first story, in Death on the Istanbul Express, and in Death in Rome, Major Peveril's around, and he is helping her in a variety of ways for his own reasons. And then she goes off to Istanbul, and that's the parting of the ways for her and Major. She goes off to Istanbul, does what she's doing in Istanbul, which is teaching. And he goes off chasing his gun runners all over Europe, which is what he's there to do. And at that point, I start a spin-off series for the Major, because I've had any number of people write to me saying, we want to know how the Major became the head of the terrorist unit. We want to know what happened to the Major when he was younger. We want to know, is the Major in love with Màiri? Well, it's difficult to tell with the Major. Is he in love with her, or is he just doing his job? We don't know. So he splits off. And when he splits off, we're getting his thoughts and his emotions. And that's when we discover whether or not he's in love with Màiri.
Cool. Another one we got to read, huh?
Yeah, I think you would enjoy it. I think you would enjoy it because it's very fast-paced. He begins in occupied France. That's the beginning of his military career, his intelligence career. In occupied France, and he gets up to all kinds of things in occupied France. And then he comes back and starts working in Whitehall because he's English and he's very wealthy, English upper class. So he can do whatever he wants to do because he's always got money to back it up. And he pulls a few numbers that not everybody would get away with, but he does. And then he keeps rising in the ranks and rising in the ranks until at the point where he first meets Màiri, he's very highly placed. And the friendship between them is a very unlikely friendship. He's wealthy, he's English, which is a race she detests, and he's law enforcement, which she's not got a lot of time for. And he's a completely different class because she's working class, she's a teacher, and he's very wealthy and English upper class. So there's just no point you would think of intersection between them. And earlier than 1970, a relationship like that would have been very unlikely to develop into a friendship. It would have stayed strictly business, and they would have parted as soon as possible because they would have nothing in common. But it's a changing world, changing ethics, changing people. They discover they do have things in common. And it's quite interesting, the friendship and the way it goes.
Yeah. Okay. All right. We have time for one more question. And so I'm going to skip ahead a bit. If you could eat dinner with anyone, past, present, or future, who would it be?
Abigail Adams. Abigail Adams was the wife of President John Quincy Adams. She was an advocate of abolition long before Lincoln or anybody else ever thought of it. But the amazing thing about Abigail Adams is we had the War of Independence going on in her life, and all the men in her family, not just her husband, everybody went off to war. This woman managed a farm, a gigantic farm, single-handed. She didn't have any help other than her children. And whilst she was managing this farm single-handed, being a mother to 7 children, cooking and cleaning, she found time to teach herself Latin from a book so that she could teach her eldest son Latin, and the War of Independence would not interfere with his education. What a woman!
Yeah,
you know?
Great. Yeah, cool.
A feminist to die for, but was she going around waving placards and demanding her rights? No, she was totally focused on her family. She was totally focused on her community. She was giving and giving and giving. And she was incredibly intellectual. She was always writing these letters to her husband on the battlefield. And he would write back and say, hey, who's running the country here? Me or you, Which is amazing.
Yeah, history is amazing, isn't it? Yeah. Yeah, it's pretty crazy. A lot to unpack there. So, but I heard that you might have some offers going on, and tell us where we can reach you online and about your.
Absolutely. I would invite all your listeners to write to me at kate@katedarroch.com. Now that's nice and easy, isn't it? It's just my name, kate@katedarroch.com, to get a voucher to download Death in Paris for free. They don't have to pay for it. I'm more than happy to give them a voucher. They can go online, they can get the book, they can read it, they can see if they like it. And not only am I going to give them the ebook version of Death in Paris for free, but also, if they want, during the release week only, I will give them a voucher to get a half price copy of the paperback. So the paperback is $12.99 and equivalent currencies in around the world. And instead of paying $12.99, they pay $6.50, which is just barely covering my production costs for the print run. But I want people to read the book. They can also get the audiobook. I'm going to do the same thing that my friends do of making a voucher available whereby they can pick up the audiobook. And I am also offering, if anybody wants it, they may not want it, but I have this beautiful physical bookmark, which I'm signing. It's a souvenir of the launch, and it shows Leanna in jail, and it shows Màiri ready to rescue her, as she's on the cover of the book, ready to rescue Leanna with her little trusty notebook, and the other one's Leanna in jail. And if anyone picks up Death in Paris this week for free and reads it and posts anywhere online that they have read it, they don't have to review. All they have to, there we are, there's Leanna in jail. All they have to do is just let me know that they've read the book, put it online somewhere, send me a link, and I will send you in return a beautiful bookmark signed that you can keep as a souvenir forever.
Cool. That's pretty generous. So they, where does that start? At your email, right?
That's my email. They just email me at kate@katedarroch.com, and they can get this lovely bookmark. They can get a half price physical paperback. Oh, and by the way, I also do a dyslexic edition because I'm dyslexic myself, and sometimes it can be difficult to read things. So we do the special dyslexic edition, which is reader friendly. And we do a large print edition because a lot of people, they like print, but they can't see very well. So we do a large print edition. You can get any one of those editions, half price, and a huge discount on the audiobooks. But also, and this may be of interest to some of your listeners who might be authors themselves or might be intending authors, my covers, and you can see my covers are gorgeous, and all my artwork that's done for me, like Leanna in jail, that's all done by a company called 100 Covers. And I can arrange for all your listeners, they don't have to come to me, they can come to you, Eric, and get a discount on the 100 Covers services. Now, I bought the entire package, you know, the premium, which entitled me to all this extra artwork. But if all you want is a book cover, the normal price is $50, and we can give you a little discount coupon, which you can get through Eric, which will give it to you for $40.
Yeah, 100 book covers or 100 covers. I interviewed Matt Stone also, and yeah, great service. I second that.
Good.
Yeah,
he's really, really good. And I mean, where are you going to get a cover cheaper than $40 that isn't complete rubbish? I mean, you aren't, basically. So that's through yourself, Eric. I'll put you in touch with the coupon, and you can let your readers have it. But if they want to come to me, those are both freebies and also discounts. Now, if you subscribe to my newsletter, which you don't have to do, but if you subscribe to my newsletter, I will also give you, in every edition of my newsletter, and it comes out every week, at least 10 and probably 20 or 30 mystery novels that you have not already read. And you can pick these up 100% for free. You don't have to pay a penny for them. You can read them and discover which authors you actually like. Because as I mentioned earlier, the cozy marketplace is incredibly splintered. People like all kinds of different stories. So my fellow cozy authors and I come together, we create a bundle of our various books, and we give those books away in one another's newsletters so that readers have a chance to discover, without having to spend money, what kind of book they actually like.
And that is where?
They can get my newsletter simply by emailing me and say, put me on your newsletter list.
All right, right. And you also have a website, katedarroch.com, no?
That's right, yes. And they can also get my newsletter on my website, because at the top of my website, there's an invitation to sign up for a free book. And when they sign up for that free book, they automatically get enrolled in my newsletter subscriber list. And why this is valuable is every week you get fresh free books that you can read and decide what you like and choose which new authors work for you. They're not all cozies. We do all kinds of different mysteries because people have got different tastes. But in the course of a month, you will get at least 100 free books that you can pick and choose which ones you want, which ones you don't want. You're not obliged to take them. See something you like, you take it. And in addition to that, every week this newsletter goes out and it tells you about my new releases. So when my paperback comes out, if you want the paperback, you'll know it's coming and you can get it at the special prices.
That's awesome. We're going to have to do another podcast and geek out on more book marketing and stuff like that.
Yeah. But I think it all begins in friendship. The thing about cozy authors is that we genuinely want to please the reader. That's why we're writing, to please the reader. And so we all help one another because we all know that not everybody has the same readership. So we're all trying to help each other to find our own readership. And in the course of doing so, lots and lots of different people get some enjoyment.
Yeah, awesome. Well, Kate, it's been wonderful. Unfortunately, we have to end it, but
what a shame.
When's your next book coming out?
My next book is coming out at the end of May, and we're having a read-along of the existing novel just before the new one comes out. So you'll be able to participate. There's 50 book bloggers who are participating in the read-along, and I will give details of that in my newsletter to anybody who's interested. Excellent.
It's been wonderful, Kate, and I'm going to reserve you for the next podcast, if you don't mind.
Oh, thank you so much. It's been a real pleasure. I've loved being on the show. Thank you so much.
Thank you. You have a great time.
Thank you. And you. Take care. Bye-bye now.